My name is Tiffany Nguyen, and my ID number is 866-95289, and my topic is on the multi-state outbreak of Salmonella typhimurium infections linked to tomatoes. So step 1 is the background around Salmonella typhimurium, and so to start with, it is a foodborne illness, and around 450 people die each year due to Salmonella. However, in the case related to tomatoes, there had been 183 cases in 21 different states. And the people at high risk include pregnant women, fetuses, children, and those with weak immune systems. Step 2 is the current situation. So, according to the CDC, the contaminated tomatoes associated with the Salmonella typhimurium outbreak has either been destroyed or consumed, which means it is no longer in circulation. So this would mean that those tomatoes in particular are no longer in ongoing risk. However, DNA fingerprinting has been done to test for potential Salmonella outbreaks due to other products. So I decided to take the SWOT approach. So the strength is that the Salmonella had been genetically related to other outbreaks, which allows more room for investigation. However, the weakness at that time was that the CDC took quite some time to investigate and come back with results, and this led to a higher risk of infection. On the other hand, the opportunity that came out from this was that the outbreak could be researched further in order to control or combat future outbreaks. And the threat comes from the fact that Salmonella infection is greatly increased when products are contaminated, and consumers that do not practice healthier habits are at a great risk. Step 3 is to prioritize core issues. So from 2005 to 2006, restaurants had been serving contaminated tomatoes, and the distribution of these contaminated tomatoes led to 4 large outbreaks of Salmonella infection. And the main cause was a particularly unique molecular strain of the Salmonella typhimurium. And the outbreak in this situation led to 180 cases in 21 different states. However, no deaths were reported. And the number one thing at that time should have been safety. So in order to prioritize safety, the public can be warned, and food safety agencies could put further research into the tomato contamination in order to combat the strain. And there are alternatives that can be taken, and one of the most talked approach is the health belief model. And in particular, an approach that could have been taken is that tomatoes had been found to be significantly related to the illness. Therefore, strict guidelines against the consumption of tomatoes could have been mandated for a time frame. Another approach is if tomatoes had been consumed, a visit to the doctors could bring down the chance of high-risk infections or a high-risk case. And step 5 is recommendations. And so assuming that tomatoes have been already purchased, it is best to discard or keep the tomatoes separate from any other raw foods such as meat, seafood, and vegetables. Another recommendation is to not purchase tomatoes in general. However, if tomatoes are absolutely needed, try to pick non-bruised ones and make sure to thoroughly cook those tomatoes. And although both of these recommendations are really great for during the time of the outbreak, as of November 3rd, 2006, the CDC had already deemed tomatoes to be safe for consumption, negating these recommendations. However, these recommendations are mostly laid out in the scenario that the tomato outbreak comes back. And Step 6 is action plan. So, although salmonella infections is not something that will be eradicated, it is in the best interest to decrease outbreaks and infections. So, in present time, constant research should be done in order to assess future outbreaks. And by 2025, the modernization of inspections should lead to a decrease of salmonella production. So, what that means is that salmonella products, like contaminated products, will be less released into the hands of consumers. And step 7 is my own opinion. So I believe that the outbreak in relation to tomatoes is not something to be worried about right now. The CDC had explicitly stated that there is no evidence of an ongoing risk. However, the case of the tomato salmonella infection gave great insight and valuable research materials to other salmonella outbreaks. In my opinion, there is more to learn about it, such as dried coconuts. However, the tomatoes were an eye-opener to a bigger conversation. And although I think that the topic of tomatoes had made me think more about how I handle my food and how cross-contamination can lead to bigger risks. And originally, I had thought tomatoes and generally raw vegetables can be extremely healthy, but now I'm starting to think less highly of them. Thank you for listening to my presentation.